Hello, interwebs, and I hope you are doing well, and I hope you are ready because I am so excited and so honored to share with you an interview that I recently got to do with Noah Averbach-Katz. Many of you may know Noah from his recent turn as the Andorian RENEE in the most recent season of Star Trek Discovery Season 3. You may also know him from his appearance in one of the episodes of The Good Fight over on CBS All Access, and also for being the husband of the one, the only Mary Wiseman, who plays Tilly on Star Trek Discovery as well. It was such an absolute honor to get to sit down with Noah, and I was really excited to talk to him, not only because of his appearance on Star Trek, but because he is a lifelong Star Trek fan. In fact, recently, right after his episode went up where he first appeared as RENEE, he put out a video on Twitter showing his pictures from his entire history of going to conventions and being a huge Star Trek fan and getting to learn Star Trek through his mother, which we do talk about in the interview. And so I just wanted to talk about what it was like to be a fan of Star Trek who finally gets to be on Star Trek itself. And that was just absolutely so much fun. The other thing that I really loved talking to Noah about was the fact that he is a huge Star Trek Enterprise fan, which his music video that I mentioned before was set to Faith of the Heart, which just warms my heart so much. So we actually nerd out towards the top of this interview about just Star Trek Enterprise, which I love that fact. I love the fact that we just got to nerd out a little bit about one of my favorite underappreciated parts of Star Trek. So it was such a fun time to not only talk to someone who's on Star Trek and talk to them about what it's like to be on Star Trek, but also talk with someone who is clearly a passionate fan and clearly loves Star Trek as much as any Trekkie does, which isn't to say that the current cast of Star Trek doesn't love Star Trek, because I'm sure they do, but it was just really wonderful to talk with someone who has been a Star Trek fan since they were, since I was a Star Trek fan, since I was a little kid. We also touch upon other things like his time with Dungeons & Dragons and playing Dungeons & Dragons with his Star Trek coworkers and things like that. So it was just a really wide-ranging conversation. It was truly wonderful, and I really appreciated the time that I got to spend with Noah. I also want to quick thank RENEE Unrated, who connected us, who is another YouTuber. So links to RENEE's YouTube channel down below, and thank you, RENEE, for connecting us. And Noah, if you are watching this little introduction that I put on the top here, thank you so much for your time. It really was truly wonderful to talk to you and to nerd out about Star Trek Enterprise. Any chance I get to nerd out about Enterprise with anybody, let alone someone who's actually been on Star Trek, is really just a true treat. So thank you to you, and thank you to all of you else out there who are watching this video, and I hope that you enjoy, and I hope that you, as always, live long and prosper. Backing up is a good thing to do, knowing my luck with computers. I've had a bad computer week this week.
There's nothing worse.
Yeah. It's like you film all this. I literally filmed a video yesterday and got really sincere at the end. It was my end of the year video, and it's like super sincere and really wonderful. And I was like, it was so nice. And then I finished, turned off the camera, and then realized I left my mic off. I'm like,
oh no.
Oh. And that's the worst, because you have to like make that decision where it's like, I still have the onboard camera mic, which is awful, and I could re-record it.
Right.
But I could also be lazy.
Right. Am I like dub this over, It's like,
yeah.
Thank you for being a friend.
Yeah, it's like you work in film, so it's like very easy to be like, yeah, I can just come in and dub over a line or two, but it's hard when it's just me and a camera for like 3 minutes being like super sincere. It's like, I guess I could just lip sync this whole thing.
Stuttering, you're thinking like, well, it's and you're just like trying to voice match that, and it's just going terribly.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that.
Yeah, it's film is fun, but it's also frustrating because it's like the smallest thing. You're like, well, that ruins all that work.
I stay in front of the camera, I'm like, you all have to figure that one out.
Exactly. It's just like, I just have to look pretty. So
not very good at, they got in prosthetics so that they're like, now we've got some cheekbones on him. There
we can hide that. Put some blue, get some color in there. Well, that is a really awesome segue to talk about you. Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate you coming on. Yeah, so you got the absolute honor and got to live a dream that all of us, I'm sure many of Trekkies want to have, is that you got to be on Star Trek this season on Discovery. So yeah, I guess the first question is, how did that come about, and how did that make you? Well, actually, you know what? I'm going to pause that. I want to go back a little bit further, because one of the things that you put out right when you came on Star Trek, sorry, this is like a rambly question, but you have been a lifelong Star Trek fan, and I saw right after you appeared in Star Trek Discovery, you put out a video of like your fandom set to the theme song from Star Trek Enterprise, which I adore you for. um, so yeah, what got you into Star Trek when you were a kid? I think that's probably a better place to start.
So there was no really choice of like getting into Star Trek because my mom was just like, you like Star Trek now. That's
Mm-hmm.
part of your personality. She didn't really dictate too much other than like, this is who you are. There's no there. You don't have a decision. You like Star Trek. You're a
Yeah.
Trekkie. This is it.
Didn't dictate
Um,
anything except for your entire interest, personality, and and everything about you.
right?
Yeah,
Come on.
yeah.
But growing up, I feel like Voyager was on in the background, but I think it really solidified at Enterprise, which is why I knew that song so well.
Enterprise
Because
fans are
when I
coming out
was
of the
like, yeah,
woodwork. I'm very, very pleased about this.
I feel like I'm sort of like, I want to take on the mantle of like, don't be ashamed of your Enterprise love. It's all right. Like, come into the light, my children. All right. So when I was growing up, like we did Enterprise, my mom would hold these it was like pre the idea of a watch party. So she called them like Star Trek parties, which was essentially me and like my other 5 best 12-year-old friends
Mm-hmm.
watching Enterprise, like when it came out Monday nights on UPN at like 8 o'clock.
Oh my god, I remember the UPN like next time on Star Trek Enterprise. Yep.
So bizarre it was on UPN. I really think like that is really at the heart of Enterprise. Enterprise could only exist on UPN in the best and worst way.
My description of like Enterprise is like it's a normal Star Trek show for the most part, but then it has these weird elements of like slightly too old people just thinking what they know what the youth is all about. It's like we get the youth, we get the kids. This is what they want, right?
It is it's very much that. And it's also, I feel like there's also this undercurrent of like a slightly older people being like, this is what kids think is sexy, right? Right? And everyone just being like,
Oh
uh
God, no, God, yeah. You just want to be in the quarantine chamber, just gelling everybody up, right? That's what everyone's dreaming about.
of course, like at 13, you're like, I guess this is it for me.
Yeah,
Okay, well, hey, I guess this is what I'm basing it all off of.
this is what I'm hoping. This is not going to cause any discomfort in my puberty at all. No, not at all.
Exactly. So we would have these Star Trek parties. My mom would write a quiz of like all the little Star Trek trivia, and then whoever would win the quiz would get like a Star Trek prize, like an action figure magazine or something. So she was really
I
working us
adore your mother.
at, get in line, get in line. She was working us very young at like, you have to be paying attention to every background deal, every word that's said, every name. So we had that. And then from there it was like sort of solidified. I mean, I just love Enterprise because I know this isn't the completion of your question, but
No. I am more than happy to go on a Star Trek Enterprise tangent. That is never shamed on this channel.
I love it because I know it just feels to me like the embodiment of Star Trek. It's
Mhm.
so campy. It's so weird. It's so sincere, and it's very serious at the same time. It's very like cheap in the classic way,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
it's
yeah.
very cheap, but also like well put together. I just feel like when I want to direct someone who hasn't really ever encountered Star Trek before, and especially feels like, oh my God, like I need to know all 9 seasons of Data's journey plus Picard, and then Riker is married to Troy, but she's the Azadi. It's
Yeah,
like
and then you
it's
also got to read this book series, like got to read Titan just so you can catch up, and then
you need to make sure that you've read the Sexy Picard mirror comic book, or else,
mm-hmm.
like,
Where he's
and
like buff as all hell. Like I'm sorry, like wow, I have feelings for Mirror Picard.
but I love Enterprise because you can just put somebody in front of it and be like, this is what it really is.
hmm
It's goofy, it's silly, it's sincere, it's like wholesome and sweet and caring, and it deep down, like, it can't take itself that seriously, you
Yeah.
know? It's like it's not that. And what I also love about it is I feel like modern sort of pop culture is constantly winking at the audience, you know? It's like, we all know this is a superhero movie. Like, you stayed past the credits, you'll get like us like having a sandwich. And I feel like Star Trek is really good and what Enterprise does really well. It's like everyone's sort of winking at each other. You know, it's like
Yeah.
we all on a spaceship and I'm on the spaceship and like, isn't this spaceship like, are you guys seeing this? Like, are you seeing this? We're on a spaceship, you know? I just think it is like it is Star Trek. You can't deny it. And it also really like I feel like there's this whole thing of like people looking back on older episodes or older series with some
Hmm.
very rose-colored glasses, specifically ignoring some sort, you
Yeah.
know,
Just a
some
little bit of that here and there, I think. You can find it.
Enterprise just doesn't allow you to do that. You
Hmm.
take it, it's like it is like this is what it is. There's not like the good episodes and then the one we don't, season one we don't talk about. We don't talk about season one and two. It's like this is it. This is it.
Yeah.
This so that's
No, 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 no. I love it too because it's also that like perfect bridge, right, between the Star Trek of past and like what Star Trek today is doing. Because it starts off in the first two seasons with that like kind of campy, kind of weird one-off episodes that like have some brilliant moments, and then has like Night in Sick Bay, which is like I adore that episode because it's the perfect like let's get drunk and watch a terrible episode of Star Trek. It's
yeah,
wonderful. And so it has all that there, but then it shifts into like the more serialized big storytelling and like big ideas. And then also like the like doing fandom what am I trying to think? Like the
service.
yeah, fan service stuff really, really well in season 4. So it's like
Yeah.
all these it does like everything perfectly for what you want a Star Trek show to do, like exactly like you said.
I also think it's like it's so clear when you watch that show, it's 2003. It's like
Hmm.
there was no way a show like this, Star Trek or not, could exist in modern television right now.
Yeah.
It's just, there's no way this kind of like episode to episode or even like semi-serialized stuff could exist like in the sort of style and tone. Like it's so clear that the franchise like had to do some real soul searching, some real building because
Had to
if they
find faith of the heart. Yeah.
that's what I was looking for. If put something like that out again, try like with CBS would see that and they would, go out in their backyard and they would bury Star Trek in the dirt, never come back, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Uh
That's my that's my Enterprise diatribe.
No, I love it. This is everything that I wanted out of this conversation with you. Really, we could end it right here. I don't need to talk to you about anything else. Just Star Trek Enterprise. But I guess to actually get to focus on you a little bit and to talk a little bit more about you, despite the fact that I would love to talk more about Enterprise.
I really don't see a distinction between myself and Enterprise, so I
No,
feel it's very
yeah,
close.
just simpatico this way. It's absolutely wonderful. Well, okay. So going from that, so you were basically, brainwashed by your parents or your mother, I should say, to get into Star Trek.
Yeah, my father was also brainwashed. He tried to resist
Mm.
it for a while, but he just gave in eventually as well too.
Yeah, I mean that is kind of part of it because I got into Star Trek through my parents too. It's like this sort of an interesting like indoctrination that constantly just rolls it on.
It's such a family affair. I've thought about that a lot. Like, what is it about the family thing? Because I feel like there isn't as much of a family passing of the thing, or there wasn't. I don't know. Now, fan culture, pop culture is like so inherent that you don't have to do that. You don't have to
Mhm.
pass it. It just like is happening. But Star Trek has this real history of like passing on the generational legacy. And I don't know. I've thought a lot about it a lot. And I think like there's something about having a place, especially in the older episodes where this wasn't as current. I don't know, having like these sort of emotional morality tales where
Mhm.
sort of everyone could like gather around the radio. And I think it's especially like the emotional impact of like being able to sort of experience excitement or loss or grief, depending on like what the different episode is. It's not just like the morality of like, the white side of the face and the black side of the face kind of stuff. It's also like, the complex emotions that brings up that
Hmm.
I feel like Star Trek does a really good job of exploring. I feel like that is part of the family thing because, mom is like, hey, I don't quite know how, I know how to explain this to you. I know how to put this in like really black and white terms, but I don't know how to like totally get explain or get you to feel the complexity of this issue, the depth of whatever this issue is. So like, here, look at this and feel there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that must be a part of it.
I think that's definitely a part of it. I think there's like an element of like, oh, I'm teaching. This is worthwhile time. It's not just like frivolous entertainment. It's like it's worthwhile time, but then it's also kind of fun and you can get excited about it. And Star Trek, I think Star Trek lives in this almost perfect middle ground where it's popular enough where you feel like it's this big, huge thing that you have a community, you have a lot of people, but it's not like Star Wars level where it's like so many people and every single person knows and it's talked about on the street. So you kind of feel like, ooh, I got this cool little secret that I'm a Trekkie.
Such a
Um,
good
yeah. And so it's like you're like bringing people in and it feels kind of homey and kind of nice. So I think it's like that like mixture of morality mixed with like community mixed with like, oh, it's something special that you maybe wouldn't encounter on your own, which I think is
I
just,
love that. Yeah.
yeah, it's a weird concoction. Um so moving on, so tell me a little bit more about actually your life, like beyond Star Trek, because I know you've done acting. You're obviously acting in Star Trek Discovery right now, but I actually don't know much about you because you haven't.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
Well, so I went to undergrad at UC Santa Cruz, and then I went to graduate school at Juilliard, which is where I met my wife Mary, who
Mhm.
of course is on the show.
Who?
Yeah, I don't know if you've heard of.
Never heard of her. No.
Yeah, we call her Killy in this house, so it's okay.
That's wonderful. Wonderful.
So I met Mary there, and you know, I've been sort of being kind of just a hustling actor, nothing really too exciting. Things that are exciting for me, but obviously nothing that compares to this. But really, it's been so much of my time has been spent being excited about what Mary's.
Yeah,
Even
yeah.
fun. I'm like, can you tell me what happened on set today? What was that like? What are they like?
Give me all the deets. Give me all the
Exactly.
deets.
So it's just been it's been a really fun time because I get to kind of have my own life, my own career, and then sort of also get to be a part of, even before I was on the show, just sort of being on set and getting to know the cast. A ton of the cast were at our wedding.
Mhm.
So it's just been a really, really fun thing to get to kind of have I don't know, the best of both worlds, if you will.
Uh-huh,
Yeah.
uh-huh, uh. Well, awesome. Yeah, I did want to touch upon, and if this is too personal or anything like that, please feel free to, we can skip past and I can cut this out. But I am just curious, like, how did you meet Mary and how did you two get to know each other and get to talk?
We were in the same class at Juilliard, so we sort of the classes there's 14 people, so you get to
Mhm.
kind of know everybody very, very
And
well.
it's an acting class, which I've been in, which I'm sure it gets very personal very quickly.
Well, especially at Juilliard where everyone is like, I'm gonna share my whole heart this time.
Yeah.
It's and we just sort of we did a bunch of plays together, obviously. There we did a production of Our Town together, and that just kind of one thing led to another, if you will. And
Mhm.
then we like were dating after school, and we were still dating when she got the show. um and, actually, I mean, one of the amazing things about getting the show was having some financial stability, which has been amazing, as
Yeah.
an actor, that's very, very rare. And so
Mhm.
that really allowed us to make some like, bigger decisions in our life that were kind of amazing.
Yeah.
So I'm like the levels of gratefulness of this go very, very deep in terms of like, wow, that is awesome, because she went from she's obviously way more talented than anybody I know and will work every second of her life for till the end of time. But she was like working off Broadway and it was amazing. But it was
Doesn't pay all the bills. Yeah.
all the bills, not all the bills. And
Yeah.
so, she literally left the Broadway show, closed it, and the next day flew up to Toronto. and has never really looked back. So it's been great.
Yeah, that is actually really, really awesome, and not something you hear about too much about this sort of thing. So that's really nice to hear. Yeah. Um, and I guess I want kind of speaking on that, like, how did it feel for you to see, the love of your life getting to also join the other thing that you really, really loved throughout your whole life? Like, what was that for you?
Just totally surreal.
Hmm.
It was like unbelievable. It was just it just like doesn't even still compute.
Yeah.
I just getting to meet everybody on the set, getting to meet all of the producers who are like huge Star Trek fans. I like am constantly like showing pictures, like all those pictures you saw in that video I posted,
Hmm.
being like, look, like I really like this.
I know them. Yeah.
They'll like I remember early on, I like right at maybe the very first filming of the Ready Room in season one, I was like sitting with Akiva Goldsmith and we were just talking, and I was just looking around to talk to anybody because I was like, that's Saru. That's Burnham. Like I like was showing him pictures of me in the uniform, and he pulled out his phone and he was showing me pictures of him in like 1976 in his
Oh my
costume. I
gosh.
was just like, this is so cool. And
Yeah.
then to like getting to walk the sets, see the costumes, like I can't really describe how massive some of these sets are. Like
Mhm.
the sort of a main body of the Enterprise is on one soundstage, and I will walk through it and get lost. Like
Oh,
I will
that's
can't actually remember how to get back to where everything is. And I just wound up in the transporter room and I have no idea how to go back to the med bay where I need to go. It's just unbelievable.
that's so cool. And I feel like that's kind of from what I've heard. I mean, I hope to have that moment one day. But I've heard like through rite of like it's like kind of a rite of passage. I remember hearing why am I blanking on his name? Ron Moore. Describing that when he got the job on Star Trek. He
Yeah.
was like, I went to the bridge and just sort of sat there. And
I,
that's just gotta
I did it so many times. I would constantly sets that I wasn't allowed to be on, particularly the bridge, and just sort of like sit and do that weird thing that people do in movies where they like run their
yeah.
hands over everything and they're like, and I was like, I couldn't believe it. And then when like my mom came to visit and she sat in the bridge, she just like sort of her soul kind of left her body
Mm,
and she just like went to another plane of existence. She phase shifted into another body, into another space, into another universe. It was just like such an amazing thing to give to her. And I
yeah.
think Mary was like, she wasn't a fan. She was like happy to have the job, but I think for her it really helps like put it all into context, make it more than just making a high budget space TV show,
Yeah.
actually does mean something to people. And even like the little moments that you're like, yeah, I have to come in and I have to do these 3 lines, whatever. People are like, that was the moment that jumped for me. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's been really, really cool in that way.
That is super sweet. Yeah, and so did your being able to get on the show yourself? I'm assuming that came out of your relationship with Mary and being able to be on the set and getting to know her, but I'm assuming there was also audition process and things like
Right.
that.
On that first day that I met Akiva and was telling him all about, my start, we were sharing our fandoms. He was like, "Well, we got to put you in as like a background thing. We got to get you there." And I was like, "Hell yeah, anything." You know what I mean? I'll pretend to be a wall. I don't care. And
Yeah.
we were out for like it was like a dinner meet and greet or whatever. And I was sitting, we were just, still talking with Akiva. And one of the women who worked at CBS came up and was like, "I know you. Where do I know you from?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know." And I was like, and she was like, "Oh, that's right. You had done an episode of The Good Fight for
Yeah, yeah,
CBS
yeah.
way previous to Star Trek, like that." And she was like standing right next to Alex Kurtzman, who, is like the head honcho. And he was sort of talking to Akiva, and Akiva was like, "Alex, this is Noah." Like he
Yeah.
legitimized me as not just like a guy who really wanted to be on Star Trek, which is totally valid.
Yeah.
But uh,
I mean,
uh,
that's what I am. I'm just a gal that wants to be on Star Trek, so I'm not shaming that. Don't worry.
exactly, like for everyone out there, it's like that is a legitimate pursuit. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? It was my pursuit literally until that moment.
Yeah, yeah.
And so he was like, Alex was like, oh, that's cool. I showed him the pictures, kind of did this whole same thing. And I think, for people working on the show, when somebody is like, I love this, I love this. It feels good because you're like, oh, I'm not, it's sort of like for Mary, it's like I'm working on something that people really love. You know what I mean? Um, and so I at some point then down the line, I auditioned for Spock, who ironically he was sort of on like it was like a fake script, like an audition script,
Yeah,
which
the
was exactly it was like an Andorian named Tom, which I thought was very ironic in the end. But
yeah.
I was reading it as a Star Trek fan. I was like, this is not an Andorian. I'm like 99% sure this is Spock. Um, and obviously didn't get that. They gave it to Ethan, and Ethan is so incredible. I'm so glad that Ethan is doing that. I cannot imagine like the level of pressure I feel to be like a quality Andorian, to have to try and be Spock. I would be dead. I think I would just die, you know?
I cannot imagine the weight on Ethan's shoulder, because that has to be, and he killed it. He absolutely killed it, but it's got to be like terrifying to step into that role.
I think like that's one of those times where it's better to like not be a super fan,
Yeah.
and just I'm like an actor, I'm coming in, I can do this. I know how to like incorporate all of the things and make it my own, because I would have been like, sorry guys, I need to lay under a train or something instead.
Why,
I can't.
why is Spock crying in every single scene? This is what's going on.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Um and then I yeah, then there was like another audition. I was actually in Toronto while they were shooting the very beginning of season 3, I think. And I flew back to New York and auditioned at CBS, and then the rest was kind of history from there.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, just kind of happened like that, I guess.
So I guess kind of jumping off of that, like, what is it like to be probably the second most predominant? What's the word? The preeminent Andorian in Star Trek, behind Jeffrey Combs, who is also like a legend in his own right to be following.
It's amazing, what I did. Well, to be it, I yeah, you could see, imagine me trying to talk about, and like Spock like that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I watched an interview or listened or read an interview that Jeffrey Combs did about like why he decided to choose to do Shran, because it was like he had done all these sort of iconic characters and they were going to bring him back. He's like, I just don't want to come back and like just
Just
do
do
something.
whatever. Yeah.
And he was excited because their Andorians are so iconic, but there was so little known about. There was so little canon around them. And he was like, yeah, I get to like build canon. Um and he did, his performance, the kind of acting choices he made about Shran essentially like created Andorian culture. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
I mean, they're my second favorite aliens behind the Trills, so there you go. That's all thanks to him.
Exactly, and so I I watched all of his episodes very, very closely, and I think, I had this task where I was like, all right, well, the script, is calling for something very different than what he was doing, but I still need to like bring that energy into him. And I guess, my hope was to sort of, as we meet Shran when he is like at the height of his powers. It's like this bombast, this confidence, this sort of blustering badass.
I'm gonna beat up all these Vulcans and beat up Archer. I just watched the Andorian incident like literally a week or two ago, so
Know there is something behind this wall. I know it. I know it. I know there's something going on here.
I got it.
It's
It's behind your weird
confident.
Vulcan face art. I don't know what that creepy face art that they have in that monastery. Anyways.
um and and then as the series goes on, when his like mate dies and when his
Hmm.
daughter is kidnapped, we see like these really deep moments of like loss and sensitivity and like emotional depth. And I feel like for me, when I think about Star Trek species, the way that they're approached is they have something they present, and then there's something that they're covering. So like even for humans, the humans sort of present this noble ideological truth and justice, and they're covering those basic baser instincts of like greed and terranness and all that stuff. And for like the Klingons, it's like sort of like this bloodlust violence,
But they
covering honor and loyalty and like a real heart and that stuff. And I was like, all right, well, I feel like what Combs has done with Shran is sort of present this sort of blustering, confident swagger, which is different than maybe something you might find with a Klingon or something like that.
yeah.
And then covering a really really deep emotional experience, a deep sensitivity, a deep hurt, deep love, like just really really big feelings is sort of covered by this outside thing. So I was like, all right, well, what I want to do is, I think we're meeting Rin when he is at Shran's bottom, when his bluster, when his confidence, when his, all those outward trappings of what it means to be an Andorian have been stripped away. He's failed. He's tried this uprising. It's
Lost
fallen.
his literal antennae, which is like the thing about Andorians. Yeah.
Exactly, and so that was my, that's a long-winded answer to say that was sort of my
Yeah.
approach into sort of adding to the Andorian ideal, that they are more complex, which I think Jeffrey Combs already did, but just to sort of add on, there's an emotional complexity to them that is deeper than just sort of like swagger,
Yeah.
and I think Rin's sort of, and we kind of got to see this in 308, like his sort of story is a redemption story, and he's trying to find his swagger again. He's trying to find his Andorianness.
How Rin got his groove back, sort of thing. Yeah.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
that's it. Yes. So that's what I hope
To
my
completely undercut the seriousness of your craft, I'll just make a joke right at the end.
I love it. That's perfect. That's about as serious as the craft deserves. So I'm
No, it's really fascinating, and then you've clearly put like a ton of really wonderful thought. Not that I didn't expect you did, but it's really nice to just hear the process that goes into creating these aliens. Because one of the things that I'm really loving about this modern era of Star Trek is that it is kind of exploding out the sort of aliens that we see in Star Trek. Because we've seen Klingons a billion times, we've seen Andorians several times, we've seen several of these alien species, Romulans over in Picard several times. And it's like we now have to find new facets of them, or else they just get stale.
And I also think, to pigeonhole them as this or that, it
Hmm.
also is like it's just a little too simplistic for species that have been around for thousands and thousands of years and have a full planet or full colonies. There's so many different facets of culture, which I'm really liking with the sort of like truth teller facet of Picard and now in Discovery. Like
Yeah.
why that should exist. You know what I mean? There are so many, I mean, we know there's so many different like subcultures and different ways of approaching it, and ways that you think somebody or someone might react and how they really react. So I think it's really fun too.
Yeah, I mean, it's breaking apart the problem that Star Trek always had, which is like the monoculture of aliens. Like all Ferengi are greedy, yeah, except for Quark, maybe a little bit, and Rom, and yeah. So it's nice to see that like literalized and showing that depth, but like still, as you clearly put in the thought, like showing the core of that species and sort of what they represent as like a storytelling level, but showing like also their, for lack of a better word, human too, or like have multifacets to them.
So that's
Um,
sort of like how they relate to humanness. Like what is their relationship to, humanness?
exactly. Yeah. Well, speaking of that, I do want to touch upon like the actual process of getting on the makeup, because that's something that fascinates me. Because I was went back and like I said, I watched the Endorian incident earlier, and I saw that there's like it's just blue paint on their bodies that they have there. You can clearly even see like pink skin underneath it. But with what you have on, I'm not entirely sure what the process is, but it's clearly like a prosthetic going over your whole body, right?
Very, very different. Very, very different thing. The Andorian stuff in Enterprise is like very cool and I love it. And the moving antennae are incredible and are like basically just like too expensive to be done again,
Yeah,
essentially.
yeah,
They're
yeah.
just cool. Um, but basically for this, in the first episode, it took 5.5 hours
Phew.
to put this thing on my face, and essentially what they do is, you've seen actors sort of get that face mold before, where they have like the straws poking out of their nose. So I got one of those done, and those essentially are the mold for just like tons of rubber face masks that sort of encapsulate your whole head, but they're in like a couple of different pieces. So there's like one on the top and one on the back and then one in the front, and they're all like glued together on your head. Um, and also like when it comes out of the mold, when it comes out of the box, like it's just like a light blue, just like vaguely blue. And so
Okay.
one of the reasons why it takes so long is because these amazing prosthetics people hand paint all of the texture, all of the real color, all of the contour onto the mask. And then they'll glue a wig on the top. And one of the reasons why in the first episode it took this extra 2 hours was that they had this beard on,
Yeah.
which hand glued. Each strand was glued essentially individually and then cut to like fit the face. So it just took a very, very,
Yeah,
very long.
that had to be painstaking.
And then, so it's glued to your face. One of the things that you do that it's sort of the great, modern prosthetics problem, which you don't have in enterprises, which you have just so much more expressivity with your face.
Hmm.
So like Shran can really express a lot more kind of heightened emotions, whereas when you're in this prosthetic, it really doesn't respond to minute facial cues. It's not responsive. It's like it's a thick
It's
mask, you know
yeah.
and so you really have to approach it as an actor like you're wearing a mask. And I talked to Doug, I talked to Mary
I was about
Chivo,
to ask that. Yeah.
talked to Ken a lot about their approach. I feel like Saru's personality is a little bit closer to Rin's as opposed to the Klingons. These Klingons, especially they have teeth in as well, and they're doing like really big faces, which can really help move the mask.
They're very operatic in that sense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. But when you're doing a small scene with David with Book and he's right there, it's like, the facial cue that you might have for like a little bit of nervousness won't read on that mask,
Mm.
just so I really tried in terms of like acting in that mask. I was like, the mask is so well painted, it's so expressive. I think maybe if can just like show a little bit in the eyes, because the movement of the eyes are very clear. So
Hmm.
if I can kind of show any kind of like indicate any kind of emotion through that, and then just let the sort of texture of the mask kind of tell the rest of the story, that will be good. um and then for the other stuff where it's bigger, where like I'm catching the cat or whatever, then I do like a really big face, and it can read really, really well. And then
Your face is memeable in that moment. It was wonderful. In fact, I'm surprised. I'd be surprised if it hasn't already become a meme.
yeah, I mean, it's fun. It's so fun, it's so big. And I mean, what's great about being a fan of the show and knowing the genre so well is knowing that in this really serious moment where Detmer is like confronting her PTSD and we're going into to blow up this enemy ship and like everything's on the line, that Star Trek can hold a full gag take of me catching a cat. So like
Yeah.
that it fits is it's a very useful thing as an actor to know, like it will hold a thumbs up. It will hold a big gag take. It's really, really gratifying to like have all of this sort of weird knowledge, of a show just like pay off in the moment like that.
It's like, I was building to this. It wasn't all useless, Ma. I did it.
Mom, your brainwashing was worth it.
Exactly. It just that actually leads me into a question that I wanted to expressly make sure I ask, because I'm sure it's the question that everyone wants me to ask. What is it like working with Grudge? And it's two cats, right? Yeah.
Well,
Oh,
okay.
speak
All
of the
right.
devil cat in the background. Yeah.
First off, I worked with Grudge for one day. It was like a 12, 13-hour day. There was only one cat on set. I never
Mhm.
saw two
Oh,
cats. I think
oh.
David is lying. He's not telling the truth.
I have heard conflicting reports on that, which is why I was confused. So I'm like, is it two cats? I'm not. I want the scoop.
Putting my foot down. There was only one cat. That other cat is probably photoshopped in. If anything David said, he's an absolute liar.
Mm,
Um,
mm.
that
Heard it here
cat,
first. That's the scoop.
that cat hated my guts.
Oh
He
no.
was miserable because I was holding him and then like screaming. You know what I mean? We're
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
like usually it's like I'm in charge. I'm gonna climb up on Mary. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna meow. They put me on the thing and put a camera in front of me, and I can just like pose. But for ours, it was like, ah, ah! This cat was just like, are you fucking kidding me? You
Oh my
asking me?
god.
So it was so miserable for this cat. And this cat really, really came to loathe me. The way that scene was sort of supposed to play out was like I was freaking out. The cat jumps in my lap and like I'm like, what is this? And it's like a cat. And then he starts like licking my face or pawing me or nuzzling me. And I'm like, all right, this cat has made me feel better. But about a half an hour in, we were like, there's no way this cat is doing this. Because when it jumped on me, the only way to get the cat to stay on me was to literally pin it to my body. So my arms are like literally shaking, trying to force the cat to like stay on me because it wanted to get away so bad. So I was working with Jonathan that day and I was like, Jonathan, can I just like let this cat go and like get into it? And he's like, yes, I love that idea. Like, thank God, because we cannot have you holding this cat for the full thing. And so by the end of the day, when I started holding the cat, it would just be yowling, just screaming.
Mm.
The sound guy was like, we have to redo all of this audio in post because it's just the cat screaming. I was wearing like this, thank God I was wearing like a leather costume. There's just like scratches and holes all
Oh
down this
geez. Yeah.
leather.
Yeah.
And at the very last take, the cat stopped yelling and just sort of turned its head up and looked at me. And I was like, thank God I have this layer of rubber on my face because if we do one more take, this cat is going to just rip my eyeballs out. I
Oh
swear.
my gosh. So you were the problem person on that set, didn't it?
Yeah.
uh,
I like to blame it on Grudge, but I think if Grudge had an interview, it'd be like, yeah, he was terrible to work with. He was just screaming in my face for an entire day.
well, I was gonna ask you for the connections so I can get Grudge on here and talk to him, but probably not the best person to talk to.
Yeah, they're not talking to me.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go through the agents. Dang it. All right. Well, kind of jumping off of that. Speaking of scene partners, I really loved the fact that you had two significant scenes with Mary, and one that was just the two of you. Like, how did that feel? I know you said you would perform together in Juilliard, but to my knowledge, this is your first like professional gig doing
We
this, right?
Yeah, we hadn't done anything since Juilliard, so it was like the first time I'd gotten to work with her outside of that in any kind of significant way. The first time that I definitely got to work with her on this kind of set. I remember walking in and it was two things. At first, I was like, "Oh my God, she's like totally in control of this scene."
And it's
Like
when she's first officer too, so now she's got all this extra confidence.
she was like just like so relaxed. She was just like, "Mm-mm, you don't do that." And I was just like, what the hell? Like, why are you? I'm truly intimidated right now. I feel like you want me to leave, you know? Thing. The other thing was I was so excited to work with her and like get to have this like tete-a-tete that I came in early on and I was like, I'm gonna come in and it's gonna be like red hot. I'm gonna be like, where's the captain? And she's gonna be like, you don't, And I came in red hot, and Jonathan's like, all right, great, great, great. No, come over and talk to me today. And he's like, hey, I just think it's like a little cooler. I don't think it's so hot. I don't think it's so intense. And I was just like, oh my God, I'm talking to you from Jonathan Frakes. This is the worst moment of my life. And left like the day finished
And
up.
it's a problem when Jonathan Frakes is telling you to like, okay, you're going too big.
Exactly. It's real. And we left the set together. Like we were walking and maybe she had waited for me or taking the car home or whatever. And I was like, "How was today for you?" And she was like, "Ugh, it was so frustrating. I Jonathan came over to talk to me and told me that I was coming in too hot." And I was like, "That's what he told to me." And she was like, "What?" And we realized that we were both like so pumped to come in and argue with each other that we both came in at like absolute red hot fire. And Jonathan had to talk to us each individually and be like, "Can you guys cool down so we can actually shoot this scene and not make it like a lover's spat in the middle of the bridge?"
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's just like everyone just thinking is like, oh, what's going on there between them? They could have an argument for yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. I thought that was very, very funny and kind of cute
Yeah, it
and
is.
humiliating.
I mean, it's all those things. Usually when something is cute, it's usually also humiliating, and that's how you know it's cute.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Um, so the other part too is I wanted to talk about your first episode, so kind of backing up a little bit, and what was that like, sort of playing this Andorian who has been sort of beaten down, and then also your scenes with David and like having to come on and like act against him because he's sort of a he's sort of a legend in his own right because I've adored him on everything he's been in, especially Supergirl. So
You know, I think I was actually really, really lucky to have my first big stuff be with David because this was David's maybe fourth episode, because he
mhm,
was in the first two or three and then he missed one or two. So he was just starting to really like find his groove,
mhm,
find his place. I mean, he's so confident, he's so charming that I don't think he's ever really feeling out of place, but he was still like, kind of like seeing how he fit in and whatever. And I was coming in like totally new. So, to have someone sort of just still be like, let's figure this out,
yeah,
and I think it also really helped because he was very interested in a great way about like what is our relationship, what are these actor questions like, how do we become friends, why do I like you, why do you like me, why are we so connected, why are we willing to save each other, and how when we do these scenes can they really feel like we're in this together, we're doing something together, that they really feel like the tension and the connection is there.
yeah,
And I think that was just so helpful for me because even though I was in the Star Trek world, even though there were communicator badges and tricorders and the baskets everywhere, when I was doing those scenes, it helped me not look forward and see, Michael Burnham with all this history that I have in my head with them, or Saru, where it's like, oh my god, like I was able to sort of get almost like a like lift off with him and
hmm
his kind of amazing energy, and really feel like, okay, like I can do this, I'm not going to just like explode or turn into a puddle or just not be able to speak because I'm so excited, so that way when I, you know in the next episode when I am with, Mary or Saru or Emily, I was sort of had a level of comfort. So it was really, really lucky to get to work with him right out of the gate.
that's awesome. Well, sort of spiraling into the next question is one of the things that I love about Discovery. And really all the Star Trek shows, but Discovery in particular is like how kind and wonderful everyone is, like both behind the scenes and on set, but just behind the scenes and getting to meet them. Like, what is it like for you? I mean, I know you were kind of already a part of it before with through Mary, but
Yeah.
how did it feel to like finally actually join that cast of people and that kind of family that sort of has grown up there?
I mean, it just feels so good because even though you're there and you're seeing it and you know everybody and everybody knows you, you still feel like you're on the outside in that way. You still feel like when you're at dinner and a fan comes up and you have to like sit back or you have to be like the fan with them too,
Mhm.
So to really feel like to be inside that and then I mean, I cannot tell you how excited everyone was for me,
Mhm.
everyone knew what this meant to me, to my mom, like everyone knew it, so it really, really felt like it wasn't just like me stepping in and being like, all right, I'm here now. It was like the whole cast and crew, all were really like, oh my God, like you're doing this. Can you believe it? You're here. Like, thank you. It was,
Yeah.
it was just a really, really special thing to kind of be invited in that way, in such a sweet and caring way. And the cast is just amazing. They're really, really sweet people. They're really, really caring people. They're intelligent people. And it just keeps getting better with Blue and Ian. Both of them are
Hmm.
just such sensitive and intelligent and kind of revolutionary people. I'm so impressed. I just think I'm just really excited for both of them, and I'm excited for Star Trek to have them, because I feel like, they, more than almost anybody I've ever met, are actually like embodying living Star Trek ideology in a
Hmm.
real, true way. And so I just think it's amazing. And I think there's going to be a whole generation of fans whose entry point will be Blue and will be Ian. And I just couldn't think of two better people to kind of open the gates for more people to come flooding in.
Yeah, they both seem, and from my brief, time talking with Ian, and just seeing Blue being out there, they both seem absolutely amazing and kind and wonderful people. And I've spoken about this too. Like, I'm trans, and it's so meaningful for me to sort of see trans and non-binary representation on the show. But beyond that, it's nice to see that representation come from like truly wonderful people, and the
Yes.
fact that they are able to be both advocates for the community that I'm a part of, and the communities that they're a part of, but also like just be kind people on top of that, and willing to do both things, willing to be a good person and willing to do this like outreach is just, it's so wonderful to see. But I also want to like discount everyone on the cast, including yourself. Like, all of you are just truly like, and I say this truly from the heart and not just because you're here. You're all like really, really wonderful, caring people who seem like you really want to like put yourself out there and like connect with fans, but also like use Star Trek as a platform to talk about larger issues. So you do what Star Trek's always done, but in the real world.
Yeah, I think there is a real sense of appreciation from the cast, of the fans,
Hmm.
especially the fans. I mean, of the sort of fan base who is interacting in a positive way,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
know, there's a real appreciation because they understand, what this has meant to people for so long, and how it has meant more than just, a fun TV show that they get to disappear into, that it really has a deep impact for so many people, like my mom. It really is a part of her identity. And I think everybody really understands that. And I think, everyone there is just really such a just kind of brings their own legacy to it,
Hmm.
I think all the way from Sonequa to Mary and Doug, and then of course Anthony and Wilson, having them both on the show, it's just like such this incredible like meta legacy that I just don't think you're really finding anywhere else in any kind of medium like this,
Hmm.
where it's not, the one-off, like, here's an interview with some people who we really like. It's like this is like this show's legacy now, which is amazing.
Yeah. I really just, it that's the thing that I think really just warms my heart about this current era of Star Trek. Like, I've loved the show and I love the stories and I love where it's taking Star Trek, personally. And I've always been someone who wants to say that, but I just think what really speaks to me is that the people behind the camera, both on the writers, the creators, and the cast yourselves, are people who like actually want to use this to say something more and to say something deeper, and also to just care about others. And I think that's something that is so uh unique to Star Trek, I think, in a truly beautiful way. And I think that's what will make this franchise continue for so long, is all of you.
I agree, and I think it really goes all the way to the top, all the way up to Alex. He loves this stuff. He loves picking people who love this stuff, and also picking people who are smart about this stuff, and who care about, both Star Trek and the larger community, and how those two things relate. So I think that's, from the top down, very, very true for this world.
Yeah. Well, to kind of jump off of that a little bit, as we start to run down, the thing that I asked Ian about, and I have to ask you about because you are their DM, right? I have to ask you about the Star Trek Dungeon. It's basically become like an official part of the canon at this point.
Yeah, everyone's asking. I love it. Uh, I've been playing, I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons not that long, maybe 3 or 4 years, but I got really into it because I was so depressed. And it's such a good
Mm.
thing to do when you're depressed because you can really feel like you're the hero of your story when
Yeah.
you're the hero of your story. And I had some really, really close friends who I still play with, sort of like introduce me to the game and understand it together. So it just means a lot to me. And I was thinking like, oh, well, I'm going to be up in Toronto for some time. Maybe I'll run a game when I'm up there. But then I got to play, so I had to leave. So it sort of just got put in the back shelf. And then when we were looking to like come up here for the fourth season with Mary, uh, I was like, well, now might be a really good time to run a game with COVID because who knows how much we're going to be able to hang out. One of the great things that the cast is able to do is like hang out and have these parties and get to know each other better offset, which is such an important part of the thing because you don't always want to be talking about work, about what went wrong, what went right. It's just like you need a break. You need to
Yeah, you need to blow off steam. Yeah.
and make new connections. And with COVID, I just think like this has been this great way for those of us who are playing Mary, Emily, Anthony, Blue, and Ian. We all get to have a time where we hang out, where we don't talk about work, and where we get to make these new stories together, like, oh, we all experienced this sad or happy or funny moment together, and we all share that, which you can't really do. Nobody wants that. Doesn't keep happening when you're doing Zoom drinks over and over.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's I like that you also touched upon like how it helped with depression too, because that's sort of how I found it as well. Like I was having a really hard time, and it's such a great way to not only like, as you say, get to be the hero of your story, but also get to like interact with others in a way that feels like it's positive. It's in a way frivolous, but also feels like it's meaningful too. And at the same time, it's like has that again that equal balance of like meaningful and it's whatever and just fun.
Exactly. It really does. It allows you to kind of leave the problems that are sort of holding you down. You can leave them and then come back to them once you're done,
Mm.
or you can bring them to the game and really, exercise them in that way. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
just such a good container for exploration, for catharsis, for like practicing what it means to like lose and fail and like for things to go wrong, but like not have to deal with it in your real life when you're like,
Yeah.
I can't do that right now.
Hmm.
And then it also kind of gives you that thing of, well, like everything went wrong, this totally failed, I lost this, or this thing didn't go. And then you keep going and you're like, oh, well, there actually is another side. Things do kind of build back up again. I was able to pick up the pieces. And that's like that little bit of practice that you can kind of bring into the real life when it feels like it's like, I think this is the bed. I'm never leaving. That's it.
Yeah, yeah, that is super, super sweet. I have to ask, since you're the dungeon master, what is your play style? Or like, how do you set up the games? Just to ask a frivolous question as opposed to the really hard ones.
No. Well, I started out by using the kind of like backbone of Ice Spire Peaks, which is like the new Essentials kit.
Hmm.
Just sort of just very backbone. But essentially, what I like to do is I've made everybody sort of write up their character backstories, answer a couple questions, try and get invested in the story, and build the story around what they offered, as opposed to like, you guys are the adventurers, the bad guys over there, you got to go get them. How can I sort of build a world around their stories? Because I feel like when I play, I'm so much more invested when like my own personal character story is like really being drawn out, or that's
Yeah.
teased. So especially for new players, to not have it be bogged down in just sort of like fight, you go to the next
Here's the
room,
next bit. Follow the bit. Yeah.
uh,
I think.
but sorry, go ahead, go
No,
ahead.
no, 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 no. This is your interview. I I can shush. I have a whole channel where I can rant about stuff.
I was like, I love doing that, but I think for new players it really helps to like, to especially to like show that just a small part of the game is sort of tactics and like battle grid and stuff. And you'll get that. You'll get there. What you know how to do, especially with actors, you know how to role play. You know how to do this. You're already good at this. You already have fun doing that. So like we'll focus on that and then we'll build up your sort of battle map skills as we go along.
Yeah, see, this is what I was gonna bring up is like whenever I play D&D, I honestly I hate the tactics part of it. Even though I love playing tactics board games, but D&D is just like I just want to go and do weird stuff because it's always weird to me when there's moments where like we have these disparate characters. Like I'm a loner, but I guess I'll join all of you for this thing.
So, that is like truly the age-old question is like, how do you get them all together? So that's why I pulled out their stories and I just am slowly intertwining them together. So that way you don't have that moment where you're like, I think I just want to go home and have a sandwich. I don't know about this, like going and fighting the demon. I might just let you guys deal with that.
Yeah, and I'm also sure with all of you being actors, like, what's my motivation in
Yeah,
this scene?
I have to work very hard to make sure people are motivated. They'll be like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, why would I do that? Why would I do that? I don't understand.
Exactly.
That is absolutely wonderful. So I guess I have one last question as we sort of like wrap out. I did want to ask. I know you can neither confirm nor deny whether in further episodes of the season or in next season. But beyond that, what do you see? Where do you see yourself going beyond Star Trek, and what you cannot confirm? I guess.
That's such a great question. It's so hard to say right now with COVID. COVID has really like shut down the industry for a lot of people who aren't, super famous. So it's been kind of a bummer, but this has been such a gift to kind of ride out the sort of I mean, ride out a part of it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know, honestly, like I so desperately want to go to a convention. When you said like, where do you see yourself next? I'm like at a convention. Can I
Yeah,
please
yeah.
go? I feel like that will be the thing that like closes the loop in the final way is to really wind up back where I started. Is to be at a convention, to be on the other side of the table, but still kind of like be this triangulation of like I'm over there, but I'm also over there, and like I'm geeking out because I'm sitting next to this person and I'm really excited to meet this person and I'm more excited about their costume than they are. I feel like that
Yeah.
just make me so happy that that's my next step in in the journey.
Well, I am very excited to hopefully meet you at a convention at some point in the near future.
Uh,
I was so sad too because I've been to conventions but never a Star Trek specific one, and I was
mhm.
planning on going to Star Trek Las Vegas this year for the first time. And they're like, nope, nope, not gonna happen. I'm like, dang it! The first time I actually had the money and time to do it. Alas,
The next time that happens, we can meet up there
yeah.
and be that much more special.
Well, I appreciate you even thinking about taking the time to meet me in person. I greatly appreciate that. But regardless, it should even if we don't, I wish you all the best at the
If
conventions.
you're
And
in Las Vegas and I'm Las Vegas, we're meeting up. So that's
well,
that's happening.
sounds great. I'm very much very excited about it. Yay. Um, Yeah, I guess the last thing I want to ask you is I try to always ask, especially actors, but really anyone I talk to, but especially actors who don't always get the chance to talk beyond, their current role. Is there anything that you want to talk about or mention or bring up that you never really get asked about or get asked to talk about?
Oh gosh, not really. All I'm really talking about these days is Star Trek and Dungeons and Dragons, and I kind of wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah.
If you want to go follow me on Twitter, mainly because we are trying to put together maybe a charity one shot with the
Hmm.
group. So more information might pop up there if you're interested, or on Anthony's page. That's sort of in the works. And I'm hoping to maybe do a little bit of, I don't know, outreach or, direct attention to some insulin for all organizations for
Hmm.
type 1 diabetes. So, but I don't really have anything interesting to say about those yet. Mainly somebody made me a really cool graphic that is like an insulin for all and a delta, and I just want to post it. So you'll see when I throw it up there.
I mean, that's how a lot of things start. When my own videos are like, "Oh, I have a cool idea for a graphic or this idea for an image." Now to build a context for it. So
It-
no, I totally.
That's totally it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it, and I'm so so glad that you are now on screen in Star Trek. You are really and truly and honestly adding to the legacy of Star Trek in every possible way and what it means to be a Trekkie both behind and in front of the camera. So thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. It's truly my pleasure. I am definitely having the most fun out of anybody interacting in this. So it's truly my pleasure. It was so much fun talking to you today.
Well, thank you so much. All right. Well, live long in prosperity, everybody, and thank you for watching. Thank you to all of my patrons this month, but especially Amanda Ronye Idanya, Catherine Lambeth, Ashley Ellen Bokikio, Miranda Janelle, Eli Bergmoss, Ashlyn Solstice, Michael D., Greg Gillum, Stephen Kleinard, Ulysses the Pagan, Randy Thompson, Munir Amlani, Chamomile T., Stefan Schuhart, Wellington Marcus, Boyd and Mary Beth Earl, Wayne Twitchell, Ish the Mad, Buttoneer, Roar, Christina Dalliance, Dominic Noble, John Steele, Michael Beam. She sells seashells by the seashore of Bajor. William Stewart, Gavin Robinson, The Sir Spence, BBD, Hannah F., Nathan Olson, Jason Knott, Andrew Jorgensen, Chris Brown, Jasmine, Maeve, Bree Beecher, Subraxis, Skylar Gray, Nathan Steele, Jane Packard and Chloe Dollar, Wen Dizzle Bizzle, Gretchen Badger, Geek Filter, Bush, Celestial Dawn, Din, Sarah Bastam, Polly Mina, Jacob Tovar, Piston Twisted Garage, Lily, Jean Mithune, Andrew Lamori, Lysa, Zone 1 Librarian, Michael Hardy, Corey Honkanen, and KT Dunn. Thank you so much to all of you. You're quite literally making my dreams come true, so I cannot tell you how thankful I am.